In the underground parking garage of Azure Heights, Dubai Marina, blood pooled beneath the fluorescent lights on March 15, 2016. The security footage would later reveal the final moments of 35-year-old Aditya Malhotra's life, but it wouldn't capture the desperate love affair that led him there, or the calculating husband who orchestrated his death. This is the story of how a young bride's search for affection became a deadly trap. Ananya Gupta was 18 when she first felt the suffocating heat of Dubai's summer air in July 2011. Stepping off the Emirates flight with her new husband Jatin Sharma, she clutched her dupatta tightly around her shoulders, overwhelmed by the gleaming airport that seemed larger than her entire neighborhood in Jaipur. The marriage had happened fast, too fast. One day she was dreaming of college and teaching literature to children. The next she was signing papers she barely understood and boarding a plane to a country she'd only seen in movies. The arranged marriage had been her family's salvation. Her father's government clerk's salary couldn't stretch to cover both her education and her sister's wedding expenses, especially after his heart attack drained their savings. When the marriage broker mentioned a settled NRI boy earning good money in Dubai, her parents saw divine intervention. Ananya saw the death of her dreams, but at 18, what choice did she have? Jatin Sharma was 42, methodical, and had very specific ideas about how his life should be organized. His apartment on the 32nd floor of Dubai Marina was a testament to his success. Italian leather furniture, German appliances, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the Persian Gulf. But for Ananya, it felt more like a luxurious prison. "You don't need to go out alone," Jutin explained during her first week, his tone reasonable but firm. "Dubai is different from India. Women here can get into trouble if they're not careful. I'll take you shopping on weekends." By her second month, Ananya understood the rules of her new existence. Wake at 5:30 a.m. to prepare Jutin's breakfast exactly how he liked it. 2 eggs over easy, toast cut diagonally, tea with 1 sugar cube. Have his evening meal ready by 6:30 p.m. when he returned from his software consulting job. Speak to her family once a week for 10 minutes, with Jutin listening nearby. Watch Hindi serials on ZTV while he worked on his laptop. Sleep when he decided it was time. The isolation was crushing. Their building was full of expatriate families, but Jutin discouraged her from making friends. "These women gossip too much," he'd say. "Better to keep to ourselves." The only person she spoke to regularly was Rosita, the Filipino maid who came twice a week. From her, Ananya learned basic Arabic phrases and heard stories about other Indian wives who seemed just as trapped as she felt. Jutin was respected in Dubai's Indian community for his punctuality, his savings discipline, and what everyone called his family values. At social gatherings, he would place a possessive hand on Ananya's back while discussing business, property investments, and the latest Bollywood films. To outsiders, they appeared to be the perfect couple, the successful husband and the obedient, beautiful wife. But behind closed doors, Jutin's personality revealed its true nature. He was calculating, controlling, and viewed their marriage as a business transaction that should yield specific returns. He criticized Ananya's cooking if the spices weren't balanced perfectly, her appearance if she didn't look presentable enough for his standards, and her intelligence whenever she dared to express an opinion that differed from his. "I brought you from a village to live in luxury," he would remind her whenever she seemed ungrateful. Other girls would kill for this opportunity. The worst part wasn't the criticism or the isolation. It was the complete absence of affection. Jutin treated her like an efficient household manager rather than a wife. Their physical relationship was mechanical, scheduled, devoid of any emotional connection. He never asked about her feelings, her dreams, or what she missed about home. She was there to maintain his domestic comfort and eventually produce children who would carry on his family name. By 2014, 3 years into their marriage, Ananya had learned to find small rebellions. She started reading books downloaded secretly on her phone, wrote poetry in Hindi that she kept hidden in her diary, and sometimes stood on the balcony for hours, watching the boats in the marina and imagining herself on one of them, sailing toward freedom. She had no idea that salvation would arrive in the form of Jutin's childhood friend from Delhi, or that her desperate grab for happiness would ultimately destroy 3 lives and land her in a Dubai courthouse, facing charges as an accessory to murder. The tragedy began not with violence, but with something Ananya hadn't felt in years, the simple warmth of human kindness. Aditya Malhotra arrived in Dubai in June 2014 like a breath of fresh air in Ananya's suffocating world. At 35, he carried himself with an easy confidence that was completely different from Jutin's rigid demeanor. Recently divorced and starting fresh as a marketing director with a multinational firm, Aditya had the kind of warmth that made people feel instantly comfortable. When Jutin announced he was inviting his childhood friend for dinner, Ananya spent the entire day in nervous preparation, terrified of embarrassing her husband in front of his guest. The evening Aditya first walked into their apartment, everything changed. While Jutin performed his usual role as the successful host, showcasing his expensive furniture and views, Aditya's attention kept drifting to Ananya. As she served the elaborate meal she'd spent hours preparing, he was the first person in 3 years to look her in the eyes and say, "This smells incredible. You must have worked so hard on this." "She's just a housewife," Jutin interrupted with a dismissive wave. What interests could she possibly have besides cooking and cleaning? But Aditya ignored his friend's tone and turned back to Ananya. "What did you study before marriage? You seem too intelligent to just be just anything." The simple question nearly brought tears to her eyes. No one had asked about her education, her dreams, or her thoughts in years. Throughout dinner, Aditya treated her like a person rather than invisible help. He asked about her family in Jaipur, complimented her cooking skills genuinely, and even helped clear the dishes despite Jutin's protests. When he left that evening, he did something unprecedented. He brought his hands together in a respectful namaste specifically to Ananya and said, "Thank you for the wonderful evening. I hope we can be friends." The friendship developed slowly over the following months. Aditya became a regular weekend visitor, always bringing small gifts, books of poetry, interesting magazines, sometimes flowers that Jutin would eye suspiciously. Unlike Jutin's friends who barely acknowledged her existence, Aditya would spend time talking to Ananya about everything from Bollywood movies to world politics. He told fascinating stories about his travels across Europe and Asia, painting vivid pictures of places she could only dream of visiting. For the first time since arriving in Dubai, Ananya found herself looking forward to something. She would spend the week planning conversations, thinking of questions to ask about his work or his experiences. When Aditya listened to her opinions about books or movies, his attention was complete and respectful. He never made her feel stupid or naive, the way Jutin constantly did. Everything shifted when Jutin's business trips became more frequent. His software consulting work required regular visits to Bangalore and Mumbai, usually lasting 4 to 5 days. During these trips, Jutin would leave detailed instructions for Ananya's daily schedule, but Aditya began calling to check on her welfare. "Just making sure you're okay while Jutin's away," he'd say, but their conversations gradually extended from polite check-ins to hour-long discussions about everything and nothing. Aditya shared stories about his difficult divorce, his loneliness in a new city, his struggles with starting over at 35. In return, Ananya found herself confiding feelings she'd never spoken aloud, her homesickness, her isolation, the slow death of all her dreams. "You know," Aditya said during one late-night phone call in November 2014, "you could take online courses. Literature, teaching certification, whatever interests you. Just because you're married doesn't mean you stop growing as a person." It was the first time anyone had suggested she still had potential, that her life wasn't over at 23. The breaking point came in December 2014, when Jutin left for a 5-day business trip to India. Aditya appeared at her door that first evening with grocery bags and a concerned expression. Jutin had been particularly cruel before leaving, criticizing everything from her appearance to her inability to make proper tea. "You're getting lazy," he'd said. "Maybe I should send you back to your parents so you remember how good you have it here." Aditya found her crying in the kitchen, trying to scrub a pan that was already clean. Without hesitation, he took the pan from her hands and guided her to the couch. For the first time in years, someone held her while she cried. They talked until dawn about dreams, disappointments, and the terrible loneliness of feeling trapped in your own life. The next evening, he returned with her favorite ice cream and a collection of Hindi poetry. They sat on the floor, reading verses aloud and laughing at silly movies on television. For 4 magical days, Ananya remembered what it felt like to be happy. On the final night, as they sat watching the city lights twinkle through the massive windows, Aditya turned to her and said softly, "You deserve to be loved, Ananya. Really loved, not just tolerated." The kiss happened as naturally as breathing. Soft, tentative, filled with months of suppressed emotion. When they broke apart, Ananya's eyes were filled with tears, but for the first time in years, they weren't tears of sadness. "I've loved you for months," Aditya whispered, his forehead touching hers. "I know it's wrong, I know it's complicated, but I can't pretend anymore." They talked until sunrise about their feelings, their guilt, their impossible situation. Both knew they were standing at the edge of a cliff, but neither could step back. Ananya felt alive for the first time since her wedding day, and that feeling was worth any risk. The secret affair began with elaborate precautions that felt like a thrilling spy game to Ananya. They developed a system of code words for their phone conversations. Library visit meant Aditya's apartment, grocery shopping meant they needed to talk urgently, and family call meant danger. Aditya would park his silver Honda in different locations around Dubai Marina, sometimes at the mall, sometimes near the beach, never in the same spot twice. They used WhatsApp with automatic message deletion, sending texts that would disappear within minutes of being read. When Jutin left for his business trips, usually announced only a day in advance, Ananya would wait exactly 2 hours before texting Aditya a simple message, "Going to the library today." Within 30 minutes, she'd be in his apartment in Jumeirah Lake Towers, a modern building filled with young professionals where no one paid attention to visitors coming and going. March 2015 marked the night everything changed between them. Jutin was in Bangalore for a week-long client meeting, and Ananya found herself standing in Aditya's bedroom, trembling not from fear but from anticipation. When they made love for the first time, it was a revelation. Aditya was patient, gentle, asking if she was comfortable, whispering how beautiful she was. For the first time in her marriage, Ananya understood the difference between mechanical obligation and genuine intimacy. "I never knew it could feel like this," she whispered against his chest afterward, tears streaming down her face. "I thought this was just something women had to endure." They would spend entire afternoons talking about dreams they'd never shared with anyone else. Aditya told her about his ex-wife, who'd left him for someone richer, about his loneliness in Delhi, about moving to Dubai hoping to start fresh. Ananya spoke about her teaching dreams, her love for poetry, her fantasy of someday writing children's books in Hindi. For hours, they'd lie in his bed, planning impossible futures where they could be together openly. The transformation in Ananya was gradual but unmistakable. She started taking better care of herself, buying new clothes during her weekly shopping trips with Jutin, experimenting with makeup tutorials she watched on YouTube. In August 2015, she secretly enrolled in an online literature course, spending her mornings studying while Jutin was at work. For the first time in years, she had something to be excited about beyond her weekly phone call home. Her confidence grew with each passing week. During social gatherings with Jutin's friends, she began expressing opinions about movies and books instead of sitting silently. When Mrs. Sharma from the 19th floor complimented her glowing skin, Ananya actually smiled and thanked her instead of mumbling awkwardly. Even Rosita, the maid, noticed the change. "Madam looking very happy these days," she observed in her broken English. Jutin attributed her improved mood to finally adjusting to Dubai life. "See, I told you it would just take time," he said smugly when neighbors commented on how much more confident Ananya seemed. But love made them careless. In May 2015, Jutin returned from what was supposed to be a 3-day trip to Mumbai after just 1 day, claiming his meetings had been cancelled. Aditya was in their apartment when Ananya received Jutin's text saying he was in the elevator. In a panic, Aditya grabbed his shoes and shirt, escaping through the service elevator while Ananya frantically sprayed air freshener and scattered cooking ingredients around the kitchen to explain why she looked flustered. "I was cooking," Ananya replied, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure he could hear it. The stove was on for hours. They realized that night how dangerous their game had become, but neither could bear the thought of ending it. Instead, they became more cautious, more creative. Aditya would arrive after dark and leave before dawn. They invested in a small radio that Ananya would play loudly to mask any sounds of conversation. By August 2015, Jatin's sharp eyes began catching details that made him suspicious. Ananya hummed while cooking, something she'd never done before. She wore lipstick even when staying home all day. Her phone was always face down on the table, and she'd snatch it away quickly whenever he entered the room. Most telling of all, her body language around him had changed completely. She seemed distant, distracted, like her mind was always somewhere else. Jutin began his investigation methodically. He checked their phone bills and noticed her data usage had tripled. He found timestamps of deleted WhatsApp conversations, though the messages themselves were gone. During casual conversations with building security, he learned that a friend had been visiting occasionally when he was away. The security guard, trying to be helpful, described a man in his 30s with a friendly smile who always brought flowers or books. In September 2015, Jutin announced his decision to upgrade their apartment with a smart home system. "It's for security and convenience," he explained, showing Ananya the sleek new devices, motion sensors, smart locks, and what looked like smoke detectors but were actually high-definition cameras connected to his phone. "I can monitor everything remotely. If there's ever an emergency while I'm traveling, I'll know immediately." From his office, Jutin began watching his wife's secret life unfold. In October, during his lunch break, he logged into the camera feed and saw Ananya pacing the living room, laughing into her phone, her whole face animated with joy. She looked like a completely different person, radiant, alive, beautiful in a way she never appeared around him. That's when Jutin realized his wife wasn't just hiding something from him. She was hiding her true self. By December 2015, Jutin had accumulated months of evidence. He'd recorded phone conversations, photographed a book of poetry Aditya had given her with the inscription "For my beautiful poet," and documented every lie she'd told about her whereabouts. But instead of confronting them immediately, he began planning something far more permanent. The trap was closing, and neither Ananya nor Aditya had any idea that their secret paradise was about to become their worst nightmare. February 14, 2016 was supposed to be their perfect Valentine's Day. When Jutin announced a last-minute business trip to Mumbai that morning, Ananya's heart soared with guilty excitement. "Important client emergency," he explained, packing his usual business attire. "I'll be back in 3 days. Don't wait up for my calls. The meetings will run late into the night." The moment his taxi disappeared from view, Ananya was on the phone with Aditya, her voice breathless with anticipation. "He's gone. We have 3 whole days." They planned everything. Aditya would bring wine, roses, her favorite Thai takeout. For once, they could pretend to be a normal couple celebrating Valentine's Day in their own home. What Ananya didn't know was that Jutin was watching everything unfold from his laptop screen in a hotel room just 15 minutes away. The hidden cameras captured her transformation the moment he left. She practically danced around the apartment, changing into her prettiest dress, lighting candles, arranging flowers. When Aditya arrived at 7 p.m. with an armful of red roses and champagne, Jutin watched his wife's face light up with genuine joy, an expression he'd never seen directed at him. The cameras recorded everything that night. Their intimate dinner conversation where they talked about moving to Canada together. Aditya promising to support her teaching dreams. Their lovemaking, tender and passionate in a way that made Jutin's blood boil. Most damning of all, he heard Ananya whisper, "I wish we could do this every night. I wish I could wake up next to you instead of him." When Jutin returned the next evening, he found Ananya humming in the kitchen, her skin glowing, her movements light and graceful. She seemed genuinely happy to see him, kissing his cheek and chatting about her quiet few days while he was away. The performance was flawless, but Jutin had seen the truth. "How was your trip?" she asked, serving his favorite dal curry. "Productive," he replied, watching her carefully. "Very productive." That night, after Ananya fell asleep, Jutin sat in his study reviewing the footage frame by frame. He created timestamps, took screenshots, built a comprehensive file of evidence like a prosecutor preparing for the trial of the century. The affair had been going on for almost a year, nearly a quarter of their marriage. Every business trip, every moment of trust, Every time he'd praised her improved mood, she'd been laughing at him behind his back. For the next week, Jutin became a different man. He brought Ananya flowers, complimented her cooking, even suggested they take a weekend trip to Abu Dhabi. His sudden affection confused her. She seemed genuinely pleased but also nervous, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. Jutin found her confusion delicious. She had no idea he was savoring his final days of superiority before destroying her world completely. On March 10th, Jutin invited Aditya for dinner, behaving like the same old friend he'd always been. It's been too long, yeah. Ananya makes the best biryani in Dubai. You have to try it again. Throughout the evening, he watched them carefully, noting how they avoided eye contact, how Aditya's compliments to Ananya were deliberately casual, how she served him with studied indifference. The performance only confirmed everything he already knew. 3 days later, Jutin announced his next business trip. Bangalore this time. Big presentation for the client. I'll be gone from tomorrow until the 16th. He made a show of packing, complaining about the workload, promising to call when he could. Ananya's excitement was barely contained. He could see her planning her freedom the moment he walked out the door. Instead of going to the airport, Jutin checked into the Ritz-Carlton downtown, paying cash for a room with city views. From there, he watched Ananya transform back into the woman she became when he wasn't around. She immediately called Aditya, her voice animated and joyful. He's gone for 3 days. Can you come over tonight? Bring that wine you mentioned. That evening, Jutin watched from his hotel room as his best friend arrived at his apartment carrying an overnight bag, expensive wine, and enough groceries to cook dinner together. The intimacy of their movements as they prepared the meal, the way they danced to music while cooking, the easy laughter that filled his living room, it all confirmed what he'd already decided. Aditya had to die. At 2:30 a.m. on March 14th, Jutin used his key to enter the apartment. The place smelled like wine and Ananya's perfume, and he could hear their peaceful breathing from the bedroom. He stood in the doorway watching them sleep, Ananya curled against Aditya's chest, both of them naked and content. With his phone, he took several photos, evidence for later, proof of their betrayal. In the living room, he selected the heavy crystal vase from the dining table, the one Ananya's parents had given them as a wedding gift. The irony wasn't lost on him. At exactly 3 a.m., Aditya woke up and padded to the kitchen for water. In the darkness of the living room, Jutin stepped forward. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? Aditya froze, the glass tumbling from his hand to shatter on the marble floor. Jutin? What are you doing here? I thought you were in Bangalore. How long? Jutin's voice was deadly calm. Listen, we need to talk about this. I know how it looks, but you destroyed my family. Jutin's composure shattered as he swung the vase with all his strength. Aditya crumpled to the floor, blood immediately pooling beneath his head. But Jutin's rage wasn't finished. He struck again and again, years of humiliation and betrayal pouring out with each blow. Ananya's screams from the bedroom finally stopped him. She rushed out, saw Aditya's motionless body, and fell to her knees beside him. Call an ambulance. Please, Jutin, call someone. But it was already too late. At 3:47 a.m., Aditya Malhotra was dead, and Jatin Sharma was standing over his body, planning how to make his wife pay for her betrayal. In the horrifying silence that followed Aditya's death, Jutin's mind shifted into survival mode. Ananya knelt beside Aditya's motionless body, her white nightgown stained with his blood, sobbing hysterically. We have to call the police, she whispered. We have to get help. Help. Jutin laughed bitterly, dropping the blooded crystal vase. He's dead, Ananya. And you killed him just as much as I did. What are you talking about? You're the one who. You brought him here. You invited him into our home, into our bed. You think the police will see you as innocent. Jutin's voice was cold, calculating. You're an accomplice to adultery, and now you're an accomplice to murder. Ananya's face went white as the implications hit her. In her traumatized state, Jutin's twisted logic seemed terrifyingly plausible. But I didn't know you were going to hurt him. I never wanted this. Tell that to the Dubai police. Tell that to your parents when they see the videos I have of you two together. Jutin pulled out his phone, showing her a screenshot from his surveillance footage. Your father's heart condition. How do you think he'll handle seeing his daughter like this? And in Jaipur, women who bring shame to their families. Well, you know what happens to them. The threat of honor killing hung in the air like poison. Ananya had heard the stories, read the news reports. Women killed by their own families for bringing dishonor to the family name. In her terrified, guilt-ridden state, she couldn't think clearly enough to realize that Jutin was manipulating her. What do we do? She whispered. Jutin's plan was methodical, born from years of systematic thinking. They would move Aditya's body to the parking garage and stage it as a robbery gone wrong. He came to visit, left around midnight. Someone attacked him in the garage while he was going to his car. You were asleep the whole time, heard nothing. At 4 a.m., they wrapped Aditya's body in bedsheets and used the service elevator to avoid the main security cameras. In the underground parking garage, they placed him beside his car, scattered his belongings to suggest a struggle, and took his wallet to mimic a robbery. Jutin then drove to Dubai International Airport, used his credit card to check in for the Bangalore flight, and called Ananya from the gate before quietly leaving and returning to his hotel. At 7 a.m. on March 15th, building security discovered Aditya's body during their morning rounds. The police arrived within minutes, sealing off the parking garage and beginning their investigation. When they knocked on apartment 3204, they found a distraught Ananya in her nightgown, claiming she'd been asleep and heard nothing unusual. He left around midnight, she told the officers, her performance convincing in its apparent shock. I was tired, went to bed early. I can't believe someone would hurt him in our building. When police called Jutin in Bangalore, his reaction seemed appropriately devastated. Aditya is dead? How is that possible? I was just with him 2 days ago. He caught the next flight back to Dubai, playing the grieving friend perfectly. But the investigation quickly revealed cracks in their story. Airport CCTV showed Jutin at the check-in counter but never boarding the flight. Hotel records in Bangalore showed no guest under his name. Most damning, forensic examination of their apartment revealed traces of blood that couldn't be completely cleaned, and neighbors reported hearing arguments and screams around 3 a.m. The breakthrough came when police obtained a warrant to search Jutin's electronics. On his laptop, they discovered months of surveillance footage showing Ananya and Aditya's affair in explicit detail. The recordings proved not only motive but premeditation. Jutin had been planning his revenge for weeks. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Ananya finally broke down and confessed to the cover-up. He told me I was equally guilty, she sobbed to investigators. He said they would deport me, that my family would kill me for the shame. I was so scared, I couldn't think straight. The trial that followed consumed Dubai's Indian expatriate community. Jutin was charged with first-degree murder, while Ananya faced charges as an accessory after the fact. His defense team argued crime of passion, claiming temporary insanity upon discovering his wife's betrayal. But the prosecution's evidence of surveillance, planning, and calculated manipulation painted a picture of cold-blooded premeditation. Ananya's testimony against her husband was devastating. She described years of control, isolation, and emotional abuse, explaining how her desperate search for affection had led to the affair. I never wanted anyone to die, she said from the witness stand. I just wanted to feel human again. The sentences reflected the complexity of the case. Jutin received life imprisonment for first-degree murder, while Ananya was sentenced to 10 years as an accessory. Both faced deportation proceedings following their sentences, but Ananya's family had already disowned her, refusing to take her back to India. The case became a cautionary tale that rippled through expatriate communities across the Gulf. It highlighted the hidden domestic abuse within seemingly successful marriages and the dangerous consequences of loveless arrangements. After serving 7 years, Ananya was released for good behavior and quietly relocated to Canada, where she now works with domestic abuse victims, helping other women escape the cycles of control and violence. Jutin remains in Dubai Central Prison, his appeals denied, his reputation destroyed. What began as a young woman's desperate search for love had ended in tragedy, destroying 3 lives and serving as a stark reminder of the deadly price of jealousy, control, and the lengths people will go to preserve their sense of ownership over another human being. The surveillance footage that condemned them both was eventually destroyed, but the lessons of their story continue to echo in conversations about arranged marriages, expatriate isolation, and the fundamental human need for genuine love and respect.